going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. It's seed starting season, and today we're starting tomatoes. But because I lost a bet over on Facebook, I got to pay up. So here you go. Soak it up, you guys. If you want to join these bets, head over to Facebook. And I said if the post got over 500 likes, that I would do this. So, well, it did. So. It's seed starting season, it's seed starting season, it's seed starting season. I wonder what will start. Woo! Okay, great. Now that that's over, let's go. All right, so from the selection of 20 different varieties we have picked here for this year's garden, you'll notice kind of a theme. We're going for a couple things with this year's garden. In years past, we've gone for like biodiversity, which was a ton of fun. We kind of just grew anything that we thought was pretty and cool, just because we wanted to see what was out there. And that was great, it was fun, but we didn't always find that we enjoyed them as much. We enjoyed them, but we didn't make them a substantial part of our diet, right? So it might be like a green tomato, and we just found that we didn't really eat green tomatoes as much as I thought we would. We made a couple salsa verdes and stuff, but it wasn't like, we're gonna eat this every day. So we're really focusing this year on foods we're eating a lot more frequently, things like paste for making pizza sauce, spaghetti sauce, different pastes, right? And then we also have beefsteak, large hefty tomatoes, because we found that we'll add them to burgers, sandwiches, or even just slice them up and use them like you would a normal tomato. So really versatile tomatoes. And then we also have tomatoes that we've never grown before that we just kind of want to try. We've eaten them, we've really enjoyed them, but we've never actually grown them in our garden. And so we will always allocate roughly about 10% of our garden to trialing a new variety that we've never grown before. And so combining those three things will make up the different 20 varieties that we've chosen. All right, so the first variety we just planted here was Paul Robeson. I absolutely love this variety because Paul Robeson is known as kind of a chocolate tomato. It's a bicolored tomato, but it's bicolored in that it's got purple shoulders and a red belly. Absolutely love this variety. It's more of a meaty beefsteak, and this is a variety that's been around for a long time, but it just kind of recently gained popularity in about the past decade or so. And this variety is actually named after the American musician and football player Paul Robeson. So really cool backstory to it. If you have time, go check it out. But this is kind of a smoky flavor as well. So it adds wonderful flavor to things like salsas and other dishes. But I absolutely love this one, and I've grown it many, many years. The second one is the pink Brandywine. Now this is a staple in our garden. We always add this one to our garden. Reason being, it is very, very meaty. We really enjoy a good hefty beefsteak tomato. The other thing with the Brandywines is that I find that they are a little more resilient when it comes to beefsteak varieties. They're a little more resilient to things like blights and other soil-borne diseases, powdery mildew and whatnot, that just tend to plague other beefsteak varieties. Now the other thing that makes them really nice is they don't crack as much. These are fairly crack resistant. You'll find that in the summertime when they're very dry and you go through periods of drought and then water and drought and then water, tomatoes will crack. And these tend to be a little more crack resistant, which I think is awesome. But pink flavor, really sweet, really low acid, absolutely love them. The next variety is Dr. White Cheese Yellow. Now this is absolutely, I think probably one of the most grassroots loved tomatoes that exists in like the heirloom gardening community. Dr. White Cheese has been around for, I don't even know quite how long, probably since like the 60s, maybe even earlier than that. But this variety, in my opinion, is one of the most low acid, sweet yellow tomatoes that exists. It starts out as kind of like a creamy color. As it ripens, it'll blush to just this deep, beautiful yellow, almost a yellowish orange. It's absolutely incredible. And it's just super low acid, like I said, but it's also a beefsteak. So they'll commonly you can get Dr. White Cheese to be a pound or a pound plus for tomatoes. The other thing I was going to mention too with all these tomatoes that we're growing is they are all indeterminate. That means that the height of the tomato will basically be determined by the length of the growing season. It's never going to stop. The amount of fruit that it puts out will be determined by the length of the growing season. It's never going to stop. We can single stem them up basically up a stake like we do normally, And that's going to continue them, basically allow them to continue growing and producing all season long. So I love indeterminates for that reason. And because we're growing in kind of our garden is a raised bed setting, we're going to be growing them high intensity and closely together. And if we had one that was determinate, which it stops producing at a certain point, it stops growing, stops producing, and it's done, the other ones keep growing. The problem is they end up getting shaded out by the taller, bigger tomatoes. So I like to grow all indeterminates. And then for containers, that's where I'll throw my determinate tomatoes because they're going to be kind of set aside from the rest of the plants. Next one is Opalka. The thing I love about Opalka tomatoes is that they're kind of regarded as one of the sweetest and the largest paste tomatoes of any of the paste tomato varieties. So if you're making like a pizza sauce or something like that, sometimes you'll have to add sugar to sweeten it. Not the case with Opalka. They are very, very sweet. Now, I will say that they are not very disease resistant. This is something that is pretty widely known about them. So if you're in a place that is more prone to disease, you may have to do some things like spraying. You may have to do some pruning of the lower leaves. There's a lot of, we've done lots of videos on how to prevent tomato diseases, but there's a lot of things you can do to just keep them disease-free. But I will say, if you're looking for a very, hardy variety that's not going to be diseased, Opalka may not be for you. The next one we're growing is Rio Grande. Now, I absolutely love the Rio Grande. We did not grow this for about the past 3 or 4 gardening seasons because it was kind of just being replaced by other varieties. But after we went to a farmer's market and picked up some, we were in New York and we were trying these tomatoes. There was a guy selling all these heirloom tomatoes. We tried the Rio Grande again. I said, why haven't we been adding these to our garden? And so we loved them so much, we decided to add them to this year's garden. Absolutely incredible. It's a really great, it's almost like a slicer tomato crossed with a paste tomato. It's very, very meaty, medium sized. It's like 4 to 7 ounces, I would say, upwards of 8 on the big end, but it's more of like a medium-sized slicer tomato, but it's so hefty and it does not have as much of that gel on the inside of the tomato. The other thing that we really like about it is, we say this a lot, but I love cultural foods. I'm a very big foodie. And Cindy and I, we enjoy trying different foods from different cultures. And the thing with Latin culture is Latin culture uses a lot of roasted tomatoes. And what we found through many different food experiences is that the tomato of choice, believe it or not, for many Latin cultures is the Rio Grande tomato. And that's just because there's not as much gel and because the skin is thinner, it roasts up really, really well. So if you're making like a salsa or you're roasting tomatoes for just, any dish whatsoever, this variety is definitely a go-to. So really excited about that. And it also handles hot weather better. So hot, humid weather thrives in. So love that. The next variety here is pineapple. Now, you guys know we grow this every single year. This is a must-have. This is not only one of my favorite varieties, it's Cindy's #1 favorite variety. It's also Aiden's favorite variety. So Aiden works with us. He's a good friend of ours, and he will sometimes help us in the garden. And he basically says, just plant me some pineapple tomatoes and I'll be happy. So for Cindy and Aiden, as well as myself, we're throwing some pineapple tomatoes in. They're a bicolored tomato, a bicolored beefsteak. They regularly will get 2 pounds. They're huge tomatoes, and they're really low acid. So because they're a low acid tomato, they're extremely sweet, very kind of creamy flesh, not a lot of gel or water in them, very versatile, just absolutely love them. They can't speak highly enough about the pineapple tomato. Next is the Hillbilly Tomato. Now, it very similarly to the pineapple is a bicolored beefsteak, a yellow-red bicolored beefsteak. It gets really large as well, like about 2 pounds. And so the only reason why we're adding this one to our garden is because I find that in certain circumstances, if the pineapple does not perform well, sometimes the conditions are right for the hillbilly. And that's because the pineapple, I find, can be a little bit finicky with humid weather. And in Michigan, if you've experienced Michigan summers, they get really muggy and really humid. And so depending on the season, I don't know, because I don't have a crystal ball, I don't know how the season's gonna go. And so I find that this is a really comparable counterpart to the pineapple tomato. So we're really just gonna grow these basically next to each other, because if one does well, the other one will kind of lack, and when the other one lacks, the other one will do well. And so I just typically put both of these in my garden because they're basically interchangeable. There's not a whole lot of other special things about the Hillbilly Tomato, just because you could basically throw them together and blindfold someone, taste them, and they taste almost the same. And then if you were to take both of them and say which one is pineapple and which one is hillbilly, I really honestly couldn't tell you by eyesight. There's slight nuance differences with the way the plant grows, obviously, and that is really the trait that I'm trying to get out of it. The flavor and the shape and the color and everything is the same, but the disease resistance and the hardiness to humidity is what sets them apart. If you have ever grown heirloom tomatoes, you probably have heard of the Granny Cantrells. Granny Cantrells is just a shortened term for the full name, which is Granny Cantrells German Pink Tomato. And basically the story behind this is that there was an old lady, her name was Granny Cantrell, and she was a German immigrant that moved over to the US from Germany around World War II. And she brought with her a bunch of tomatoes. Now, in the community that they were growing them in, they would basically, during the Great Depression, they would sell these varieties at market, and so many people started consuming them in the community and liking them that a bunch of the farmers decided to start saving seeds and grow them. And to pay homage to her, because they were the tomatoes that she brought over, they named it Granny Cantrell's German Pink. And so it's a really, really cool story, just a very unique kind of wartime variety of tomato. Absolutely love it, and it's just one that, I enjoy it just because it's a beefsteak, it's hefty, it's meaty, but it also is just a wholesome backstory, which I think is really cool. All right, now the next one we grow just because of its novelty factor. This is the Marion tomato. Now it does taste great, and it does meet our criteria of being a very productive kind of slicer slash beefsteak tomato. It's beautiful all around. I mean, it's basically a blemish-free tomato, but the real reason why we grow it is because it's called the Marion tomato. My last name being Marion. And so this variety was grown from Marion, South Carolina, and it was named after General Marion. And so the whole, that whole area was named after a Civil War general. And so the last name Marion just has significance down there. But I don't have any relation that I'm aware of to this person, but my name is the same, and so I always grow it to tell people that it's my tomato. But that's really, honestly, the only reason. It's just a good conversation starter when people come into the garden. It's just, a good way to break the ice. So anytime I bring someone that's never been in the garden before, that doesn't know who I am, I'm just bringing them over just to socialize, I always show them this tomato because it's going to start some questions no matter what. All right, the next variety I absolutely love for the backstory. It's absolutely incredible. It's one of the coolest backstories I think that really exists in heirloom tomatoes nowadays, and that is the trophy tomato. So very similarly to the Marion tomato, it's got great flavor, great productivity. It's just an amazing tomato all around. But the backstory is why you guys are gonna love this. So in 1870, this variety was submitted to the World Fair, and it was seen as kind of, there was a competition to find the next perfect round tomato. They were just at the time trying to find a productive variety that they could bring to market as a market-friendly heirloom tomato. And at the time, tomatoes were all craggly, misshapen. They were just, they were all random, as heirloom tomatoes should be. But there was a gentleman that brought this tomato to the World Fair and that won the blue ribbon. Quickly word spread that this gentleman had created the perfect tomato. It was the sweetest, most productive, most reliable producing tomato, and it quickly became the trophy tomato, and that's how it got its name. But not just that, but back in the day, tomato packs, just the seeds alone, were selling for $5 a pack, which is the equivalent of $80 a pack today, and that's because the demand for them were so high that the guy, rather than sell them at a normal price of seeds, which was about a penny or 2 pennies per pack at the time, sold them for up to $5 a pack because he was basically selling this as the world's best tomato, and there was only so many of the seeds available. So cool backstory, interesting, interesting history on this variety, but really, really love it. All right, the next variety we're growing is known as Rosatoburn. The Rosatoburn tomato is a Swiss variety of tomato, but it's actually become really culturally important in France. And the way that the name came about was Rosatoburn basically means, burner means to toss into the air. And so rose is basically like toss the rose into the air, right? It's like just throwing flowers essentially. And so it really is pretty accurate because it's super productive, and the plant, when it becomes fully loaded with tomatoes, looks like basically a rose bush. And it is so productive that I had to add this one. It's really beautiful, perfectly round, super low acid pink tomatoes, and can't go wrong with it either way. It's just a phenomenal producer. Then we have the watermelon beefsteak. This, again, super big, super hefty beefsteak. It's more on the pink scale, which is really cool. A standard beefsteak is nice and red. This has more of a pinkish hue to it, so it's lower acid. I tend to like a lower acid tomato, as you guys have probably seen. I also do like a really good classic tomato punch to the face, but there's a time and a place for it. So when it comes to just like a nice mellow eating tomato, you cannot go wrong with a watermelon beefsteak. Then we have here the Quadro Tomato. We actually grew this about 3 years ago, fell in love with it. The seeds actually became not available for quite a while because of the fact there was several crop failures. There's been a disease going around in the south that is actually coming up from Mexico and is killing a lot of the tomato varieties. And Quadro Tomato, though it can be grown up here in the States, where our farmer was located at the time, they were growing it down in New Mexico, and the crop failure happened and wiped out their entire crop. And so they had to basically let their land rest for 2 years before they could grow it again. And now that they have it, we're carrying it again, and I'm really excited about it because it's just a beautiful little plum tomato, super unique. And the thing I love about it is just the characteristics. The leaves on the fruit are really long. The little tomato leaves that attach to the stem are like this long. It's the most wild-haired dude tomato you could possibly grow. Really, really cool, beautiful paste tomato. But it's just a unique and really great tasting one. All right, next variety is the Valencia Tomato. This one I'm growing just because it's Geneva's favorite tomato. Really low acid. If you've ever tried a sun sugar or sunray tomato, it's like wow sweet, super creamy, indeterminate. It just grows these beautiful 8 to 10 ounce hefty tomatoes, bright, brilliant golden orange. It's awesome either way, but definitely have to grow it for the little one because she loves that variety. And then we also have the Ananas Noir. This is known as black pineapple. It's a green and purple bicolored tomato. Whoa, cool, super amazing. Absolutely love this one. And again, it's a really cool kind of acidic pop with kind of a fruity undertone, almost like pineapple. It's very cool. I can see how it gets the name black pineapple because that's what it translates to, but it has a very fruity undertone with a tomato acidic pop on the top. It's really great, very productive, and very disease resistant, I find. Then we have Gilberti. Gilberti is we grow it almost every single year because it's just one of the most productive paste tomatoes I find. Now, is it the most flavorful? I don't think so. I would rather have Opalka flavor, but the productivity of the Gilberti is through the roof. So when you're looking at a really productive paste tomato, I always go for this one. It's right on par with Roma tomatoes, only that this is indeterminate. So when a Roma stops halfway through the season, it's gonna keep producing. So absolutely love it for that reason. And then we have the vintage wine. This is actually it's a bicolored tomato, but it's known as a zebra striped tomato. It was one of the first zebra striped tomatoes on the market, believe it or not. And how it originated was it was crossed with, there was a tomato that had blotches on it. It was a gold medal tomato. It was kind of blotchy yellow and blotchy red. You can still find that tomato to this day. But it was crossed with just a standard red tomato that had some green striking through it. And the striking, rather than stay green, translated to yellow from the gold medal. And it's incredible because this tomato is brilliantly yellow and red, perfect zebra striped patterns on it. Absolutely sensational, and it's really, really cool. But it's also very sweet and has a great history to it. All right, and the very final variety that the garden could not be complete without is the giant crimson tomato. I'm really excited to be adding this one to our garden this year. Now, in the past, we've not really grown it outside because of just how in demand these seeds were, and a lot of the threats we had from people around that wanted to steal this tomato because of the significance of the backstory. And for those of you that are thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? Go check out the whole video series we've done on this tomato. This is a tomato that about 6 years ago, we brought back from extinction. We bought a shadow box off of Etsy from an antique dealer. And inside this antique shadow box was sealed 4 different seed packets. But inside those seed packets, with the original glue and everything, was seeds inside. And we knew it was a long shot to try to germinate them, but I said, if anyone's gonna try, it's gotta be me. So we paid up for this thing. We paid a ton of money for this shadow box. I think it was like $90 or even close to $100 to have this shadow box. And I just had to have it because the seeds inside were so important. And one of those varieties was a now not extinct, but then was extinct tomato variety called the Giant Crimson. And this was a variety that was basically bred out of existence because there was more important varieties that farmers were growing. And so rather than grow this one, they grew other varieties. And so this one was basically shoved to the wayside, never to be grown again. And we saw basically the importance of this variety in just biodiversity and having it around. And so we tried several hundred seeds with no avail, and finally we had 2 that sprouted. Of the 2 that sprouted, 1 survived. We were able to take cuttings from that single variety, grow it out, and cultivate it. And now we have it commercially available. We're having it grown on a USDA certified organic farm that's growing them for us. And every single year now, we're going to have a steady supply of the Giant Crimson tomato. And I'm really honored about this because this is the whole mission and the whole legacy that I want MIgardener to carry with it, is the importance of biodiversity. There will always be some flashier, cool object that's going to distract gardeners, and I get distracted sometimes too. But you want to come back to the heirlooms because the stories are amazing, their genetics are important, and if you lose them, who knows what the repercussions are of that. So we have to add this one to our garden. It's just kind of a staple, but the flavor is great as well. The story is phenomenal, and the fact that this is one that we're continually just growing out. I want to have this one just as kind of a centerpiece of our garden. So we added this one to our garden as well. So those are all the tomato varieties we are adding to our 2023 garden. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you'll try some of them or even all of them, but I do want you guys to go check out all the different varieties we have to offer and go find ones that you think are going to be cool in your garden. Let me know in the comments box below the varieties that you're choosing. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care, guys. Bye.